Welcome back. And this time I'm here with some very special guests, which is our 4 tech reporters. We have Mathieu Paulet, Gian Valpicelli, Clotilde Goujard, and Peter Haag. The Flemish vowels are always difficult. Apologies. We wanted to just have a quick run. I mean, you have a unique view on what's happening in EU legislation and what's happening this year. And we've spent a lot of time talking to the policymakers who told us their views. But you often have a more rounded view of what's happening. And can I start and ask you what you think the tasks of the next European Commission and Parliament will be? I'm going to start with Mathieu.
Of course. So hi. So I'm following telecoms and cloud here at Politico with this incredible team. And so on telecoms, obviously, so you may have attended the panel earlier today. The Commission now has a lot of ideas how to boost the industry, to bridge the connectivity gap, and to actually meet the ambitions for the end of the decade, like the 2030 digital targets. So a lot of ideas, but very few of them are actually highly consensual as we speak now. So I guess like the main task for the Commission now will be to actually convince the industry, the whole industry, and member states to embrace the ride and actually, to actually look into maybe consolidation, which is a very sensitive topic, to look into maybe letting giving some powers to the European Commission when it comes to spectrum and orchestrating like the spectrum auction and timeline and harmonizing it all. So yeah, that's a uphill battle, and I think it'll take some more months, if not years, so before we can actually get to something to possibly Digital Networks Act at the end of the day. Yeah.
We've had some hints in the last few days in that we've had these reports from these wise men, the 2 Italian wise men, Mario Draghi and Enrico Letta. What have they said about telecoms?
Well, they seem to be seeing eye to eye with the Commission on many topics. They too see that maybe the market is too fragmented to actually allow the telecom industry to benefit from economies of scale, from synergies. They too see that we shouldn't fight consolidation for the sake of fighting consolidation. To different degrees, obviously, and even the Commission has ruled out before, like in market consolidation, so allowing national mergers as a silver bullet solution. But we see that we're going into that direction, and that yes, both reports seems to be going into that direction. That we need to do something. We need to act now to actually complete this telecom single market, which is now made up of 27 national markets.
So that's good news for the telecoms industry, maybe less good news for DG Comp, which has its opinions about growing.
Exactly, and I wouldn't even say like the whole telecoms industry, because there is also like a fight brewing within the telecoms industry between the largest, some of them being the incumbent, the legacy operators, and what we call like the alternative operators, and there are many of them also in Europe. So yeah, there is a lot of fight within fights, and so it's not the end. Yeah, that will be a tough.
Our next big topic, and we've spent a lot of time today talking about artificial intelligence, and I feel it almost unfair asking you, Jan, to predict the future in an industry that's changing every week, sometimes every day. There's something new and a new twist in the tale. But what do you think most needs to be done in this area? What do you think the Commission and the Parliament will spend their time on?
We know what the watchword was today, which was implementation. So we will see a lot of delegated acts and implementing acts coming out just to make the AI Act happen. We will see whatever happens with the AI office. Some member countries would ideally at some point like it to become an actual agency. So I'm not sure it will happen the next Monday, but that's kind of long-term horizon, as opposed to just being run out of the Commission itself, might become an independent agency.
How soon might it be up and running?
What?
How soon might the AI office be up and running?
I mean, right now, as I famously wrote, is literally 6 people in their coffee machine. It is a couple of units for the DG Connect, including the one our panelist, Juha Eikila, who is in, I think, number 2, A2. But they're recruiting people, right? I mean, there have been a lot of little subtle and less subtle criticisms about the kind of salary that people applying to join the AI office right now can expect, which are nowhere close to what they can expect if they were to work for a tech company, or possibly even to rival AI safety institutes in other countries. They are, I think, already busy, or at least starting to grapple with the implementation. And specifically, one thing I'm curious about is the template for the disclosure of copyrighted content used to train AI models.
That's the fun stuff.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff, right?
So what's happening on that?
Well, we don't know yet. There will be a template explaining exactly how to create this summary, because developers of AI models trained of copyrighted content, we have to create a detailed enough summary of what content went into training the model, presumably to help copyright holders claim their rights. There will be, I think, more work done, and I know there are ongoing conversations with some publishing companies and content creators in general in terms of how to essentially make sure that the opt-out mechanism, if someone doesn't want their AI, their material, the copyrighted material, to be used by AI to train, how to opt out of that. It's not clear whether that's there yet. They want to work on it. So that's another thing that is high on the agenda. So the whole copyright meets generative AI juncture is going to be fairly important to what the AI office does, and in general what the Commission does.
We do this summit every year. What do you think will be happening in AI? How do you think AI will be changing our lives within a year?
Well, I don't know. I mean, one thing I'm curious about is when we'll stop. Well, this is literally me shooting the crap here. We'll stop talking about AI in politics in terms of risks only, in terms of deep fakes. There is, of course, a fantastic series we have right now. And when we'll start seeing AI used as actually a strategic tool, a strategy tool for politicians or decision makers, policy makers that actually want to create new ways to solve problems. And I think that right now, even the smartest models are fairly dumb, but I'm excited to see a smart enough planner, AI planner, to emerge. And maybe we'll see a new campaign planned entirely by an AI, not necessarily in a malicious way. But that's literally me talking about my dreams.
No, we were chatting about that this morning with Mrs. Vestager. She said that she had tried an AI voice clone, and we did a story about this morning, which you can read on our website, where Mark Scott cloned his own voice and cloned mine. And you can listen to the AI version and the real version and see what you think works best. But she said she'd had this done to have her speak in different languages. So she'd originally done it in Danish, and she had herself giving a little speech in Chinese.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty cool. I mean, I would love that, to be able to speak perfect French, much better Dutch. You know, I mean, that you could, we know the words, but they don't always come out of our mouths the way we'd like them to. And that is something where AI could do that.
That's not yet Jim Messina levels of planning. It's more like changing your language.
So,
but it's a good
we
start.
27 languages for the AI summit next year. That would be great.
Next year we'll speak Chinese and Russian and whatever. But to be honest, I don't know. I'm very curious. Once I asked Sam Altman what he thought would be the level of GPT, the model, when he would start getting really worried. And I can't really say what he said, but I'd say more or less it would be like 5-6 years from when we talked about it, so last year. So it will be 5 years from now. So I don't know when we're going to have AI that poses actual existential risks, but maybe that's a wrong debate, as we heard in other panels. Maybe we should talk about other things like biases and more run-of-the-mill problems.
Clotilde, if I can turn to you. Clotilde, you have a very wide beat. You cover data protection, but you also cover an awful lot of content issues, from CSAM and content moderation. What do you think are going to be the big themes for the next Commission and Parliament?
Well, first of all, with the Digital Services Act, I think one of the big things is going to be to see how it's going to be enforced, especially by the European Commission and also by the Irish regulator. That's going to be a big one. They also have some delegated act and some code of conduct, including one on age verification and age-appropriate content for kids. And that's one of the emerging topic is, as we've heard in the panels before, is the impact of online platform and social media on kids' mental health, for example, and all these issues are coming up. Also at the intersection of data protection and content moderation, we're seeing this big issue of age verification and how can we ensure that kids who are, too young cannot access some platforms, including porn websites. So that's been one of the big debate, because how can you do it while respecting GDPR and privacy rules? So that's going to be, I believe, sort of some of the key issues in the coming commission. I think if you look more specifically at some legislation, we've seen that the law on child sexual abuse material is still stuck in the council, with EU member states still at loggerheads over what they want to do, with very divergent positions on where to go in terms of like how much this balance between privacy and monitoring, potentially monitoring messages in order to find potential illegal content or conversations between offenders trying to groom kids. So there's still no compromise in that space, and so it's unclear what the European Commission will decide to do in the next mandate with that text.
I mean, these are very emotive issues. These are very strong feelings on both sides. Did it surprise you that it was so difficult to get a deal, or was there hopes that it might sail through? A lot of legislation went very fast.
Correct, yeah. When you see the DSA, the DMA, lots of them. Not particularly. I feel, first of all, I mean, when I started at Politico 3 years ago, one of the first legislation I had to cover was a temporary derogation of e-privacy. So this was the derogation so that companies could still voluntarily scan messages to find child sexual abuse material. And that was already extremely heated. And you could already see all the different tactics and negotiations, and it was very emotional. And that was foreshadowing the sort of negotiations we've seen now with the permanent law. So from the get-go, it was clear that it was going to be a hard one. It was, I guess, in a way surprising how fast it went in the European Parliament. That was a space where you could have thought that there would have been more discussions. And no, so not surprising, I think. And that's one of the reasons why they're struggling to find a sort of balanced compromise, if I can use sort of EU jargon to speak about legislation. It's unclear if maybe also a potentially new commissioner, Ylva Johansson, who is the commissioner for Home Affairs, has made it one of her big file that she's fighting for. She has lots of others. I'm thinking about drug trafficking and lots of things that my colleague Peter has kept an eye on. But protecting child from sexual abuse online is one of her main file, and it's become very emotional, and maybe a potential change in faces and people in this file could also bring new blood and new decisions. I'm also not sure how the changes in the Commission and in the Parliament will impact future negotiations and potential future trialogues.
We spent a lot of the last year talking about elections, and the elections are very close now, disinformation, and we talked about deep fakes. And how much have we seen those fears turn into a reality?
We've seen some of them for deepfakes. Gian would know better. We've seen some. I mean, the French Minister for EU Affairs, Jean-Noël Barrot, was mentioning this deepfake in Slovakia that appeared just before the vote. We've heard about the Biden robocall in the US. So it's there. It's enough. I think the fear is enough to create doubts that it could happen. Again, like Minister Barrot was saying, if it does happen and platforms are not ready for it, and it does create some fears about the integrity of election, that in itself is enough to undermine democracy and undermine our system. And I think that, in a way, maybe sometimes the fear is bigger than what is actually really happening. But again, if you're talking to cybersecurity experts, but also tech companies, reports from Microsoft, for example, are underlining some sort of persistent Russian or pro-Russian disinformation campaign. So they're out there. The question is, I'm not sure, and that's what also Mark was writing in his stories. It's not clear if they've already adopted some of the newest tools, such as deepfakes.
Pivoting entirely to Peter. Peter covers a very wide range of subjects. Some of them platform work have kept us very busy. But I'd like to ask you about economic security of supply. What is that? And why should we worry about it?
I think we will learn the next few years. Yeah, economic security. I mean, it's a package that is not linked to tech that often, but I think it is. Tech is at the core of it, because I think this mandate, everyone has come to a realization. Okay, maybe we're too dependent on other parts of the world with regards to tech. We had the CHIPS Act, and in a way, the CHIPS Act was quite easy. You just splash some billions and you build a factory in Germany, and then you have more chips production here in Europe. That's quite easy. But I think the next mandate will be much more about, okay, we have strategic tech ourselves as well. Which of that tech do we want to protect, and are we still at ease with just sharing that tech with the rest of the world? And I think we've seen that already a bit happening, for example, with the case of the Dutch company ASML, which has unique machines for chip printing. The US has said to the Netherlands, okay, you have to stop exporting some of the more advanced machines to China. And I think like that's still very much at the level of the member states. But now the European Commission is also coming to the realization, okay, we have to be at the table. I think the executive vice president said it this morning. We need a seat at the table there, because then we can also be more one block there and more united towards the pressure that we face both from the US and China. And we now have that famous critical tech assessment. The Commission is looking into AI, quantum, biotech, chips. What are the critical assets that we have in that space? And I think the next mandate will be very much about, okay, how are we trying to protect these critical assets? And that's often forgotten also, how do we promote, how do we make sure that these critical assets become stronger, and that we make sure that we keep on being a front runner in certain areas like quantum, like chips, as we are at the moment. So I think that's economic security. That's really about thinking about what are our dependencies, where are we strong, what's maybe our bargaining chip that we can put on the table.
Is there wide support for this? I mean, is it across the European scale? Are there people who are happy to see these more limits on critical tech and exporting certain things?
Well, I actually think that the biggest enemy in this debate is not China, it's not the US, no, it's actually like Europe itself, because when you have this debate, a lot of EU countries will say like, okay, I have indeed critical assets in my backyard and I like them and I want to promote them, but I'm not going to tell Brussels what the critical assets are. And I've heard from in the Brussels corridors that this critical tech assessment is really a touchy thing, and that EU countries are not that keen to share very sensitive information. And I think it's also a space where there are different areas connecting. It's a bit foreign affairs, it's a bit trade, it's a bit tech. Also here in Brussels, you have DG Connect working on that, you have DG Trade working on that. So it's one of those areas where everything can just get stuck, because there are a lot of players who have to talk to each other on this topic, and there's maybe a lot of distrust among these players to talk about it. So I think Europe's biggest enemy there is Europe itself.
Just to go run back very, very quickly, out of critical tech, where do you think Europe is strongest? What kind of areas what sectors are we talking about here?
R&D on chips, definitely. You have Belgian IMEC, you have ASML, which is, I think, one of the key players in the industry. Without ASML, there wouldn't be a chips industry. Quantum is also a very promising field. It's still early to see where this will, in what this will translate, but it's very vital for security, for defense. So there too, R&D and promoting that R&D is important. And biotech is also often mentioned. That's more for our health colleagues, but biotech is also one that is very important.
Just to ask you all quickly, what were your top takeaways from today? Was there something you learned that you didn't know before?
Please just start.
No, that I didn't know before. No. I confirm my impression that implementation is going to be the new buzzword. Maybe rightfully so.
It already is.
Maybe rightfully so. I mean,
Yeah.
so not sure whether it would be as exciting to chase implementation documents, but
Well, if we believe that,
that's our living
let's
now.
wait and
That's
see. I don't think we're
way.
going to be a regulation-free zone. I don't think that's the business of this town.
There's still the metaverse. Don't forget that.
Oh God. Peter,
And maybe from my panel, skills is not mentioned a lot as an important topic, but I think it will become a big topic when we have indeed like this AI evolution, and to see indeed like how it impacts the workspace. I think skills will become much more important.
Clotilde, anything?
I don't know if I learned something new, but I think I was surprised in my panel with the different MEPs about their assessment of the potential re-election of Trump on EU-US relationships on tech, which they saw as they didn't seem too worried, except for Kim von Sparentak, and then the impact of a European Parliament with more far-right MEPs and the impact that this could have on digital policy, which I think Dita Charanzova mentioned. They would largely focus on, they would have a bigger impact on foreign policy and Green Deal, and the only file that could be more controversial would be disinformation. But I was quite surprised. I would think that they would have stronger assessment or on these two topics.
Mathieu?
No, just like generally, I didn't learn anything new. Maybe just got a confirmation that for me, like the telecoms conversation is still very touchy, and probably 1 year from now we may have the same or similar conversation, and they won't have really progressed that much. Hopefully they will, but yeah, it'll take some time.
Well, the only thing we can say in tech world is that we never know what's happening in the year ahead. So we look forward to seeing you. I'm going to finish up in a moment, but thank you very much for everybody for joining us. And I'm going to have a final roundup. It's been great to hear from all of you reporters. It's been great for everybody to be here. I mean, this is, I think, our biggest ever tech summit. It's partly hit by COVID years where we were online for, I think, the first one I did 2 years ago. But it's a very full room, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and new faces. A huge thank you to all of our speakers who gave their time and insights today. Thank you to our partners for making this summit possible. Leading partners Amazon and Microsoft, and our presenting partner Google. We're not quite done. There are 2 roundtables starting now simultaneously. AI and Healthcare in Studio 312 and AI and Cyber Defense in Studio 311. We hope to see you there, but thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next year. We have plenty of other events though. Do take a look at the Politico website, and there's many on tech that you'll spot, and we'd like to see you then in the future. There's 2 in the fall. We'll have the Competitive Europe Week from October 1st to October 3, and our Sustainable Future Week from December 3 to December 5. Have a very good evening. Thank you.
We are united in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinion.
If we do not renew our partnerships with the rest of the world, Europe will not be relevant.
We can make it if we are together as Europeans.
Do you genuinely believe that countries will manage to reach these very ambitious targets?